What if history's most devastating weapon had never been used? What if, in August 1945, the atomic bombs were never dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki? This isn't just a simple "what if?" It's a question that completely rewrites the end of World War II and the entire second half of the 20th century. Let's dive into this alternate timeline and explore a world without the atomic bomb. By the summer of 1945, the war in Europe was over, but the conflict in the Pacific raged on. Japan's military leadership was deeply entrenched, vowing to fight to the last man, woman, and child. The United States and its allies were preparing for a full-scale invasion of the Japanese mainland, codenamed Operation Downfall. This wasn't just a plan, it was a terrifyingly real prospect. Planners estimated that an invasion could result in millions of casualties, not just for the Allied forces, but for Japanese civilians as well. The fighting on islands like Okinawa and Iwo Jima had shown the world the ferocious, brutal nature of this conflict. It was a horrifying preview of what a full invasion would look like. So, in our alternate timeline, President Truman decides against using the new atomic weapon. Maybe the final test wasn't as successful, or perhaps moral and ethical concerns won the day. What happens next? The most immediate alternative was Operation Downfall. Scheduled for November 1945, the first phase, Operation Olympic, would have involved nearly 800,000 Allied troops landing on the southern island of Kyushu. It would have been the largest amphibious assault in history, dwarfing even D-Day. The Japanese were expecting it. They had mobilized their entire population. Their plan, Ketsugo, involved throwing everything they had at the initial beachheads. They had thousands of kamikaze planes and boats, and a civilian population trained with bamboo spears, ready to defend their homeland. The fighting would have been unimaginable. The cities already ravaged by conventional firebombing would have become battlegrounds. Casualties would have been astronomical. Some estimates predicted over 1 million Allied casualties and anywhere from 5 to 10 million Japanese deaths. The war wouldn't have ended in August. It would have dragged on, possibly well into 1946, leaving a trail of death and destruction far greater than what we saw in our history. But there's another major player we have to consider: the Soviet Union. On August 8, 1945, in our timeline, the Soviets declared war on Japan and invaded Manchuria, swiftly crushing the Japanese Kwantung Army. In a world without the bomb, this invasion still happens. But now, it's not just a final blow, it's a major strategic move in a continuing war. Soviet forces would have likely continued their advance, possibly pushing into Korea and even onto the northern Japanese island of Hokkaido. This leads to a chilling possibility: a divided Japan. Just like Germany and Korea were split between the Allied powers and the Soviet Union, Japan could have met the same fate. Imagine a communist North Japan, backed by the Soviets, and a capitalist South Japan, occupied by the Americans. The cultural and political heart of Japan would have been torn in two. The post-war Japanese economic miracle might never have happened. Instead, Japan could have become another flashpoint in the Cold War, a nation permanently divided, its people separated by an ideological Iron Curtain. Now let's think about the Cold War itself. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki didn't just end a war, they announced the dawn of the nuclear age. The horrifying power of these weapons cast a long shadow over the next 50 years. This concept of mutually assured destruction, or MAD, became the strange, terrifying bedrock of global peace. The United States and the Soviet Union, knowing they could obliterate each other, were forced to avoid direct conflict. In a world where the bomb's power wasn't so brutally demonstrated, would that have been the case? If the first use of a nuclear weapon happened later, perhaps in a proxy war like Korea or Vietnam, the consequences could have been even more catastrophic. The taboo against using nuclear weapons might never have been so strong. Without the shocking images from Hiroshima, world leaders might have viewed atomic bombs as just larger, more powerful conventional weapons, making their use in a future conflict much more likely. The nuclear arms race would still have happened, but it would have been a race without a clear understanding of the finish line: total annihilation. The Cold War could have become much, much hotter. The psychological impact is also huge. For Japan, the experience of the atomic bombs is deeply embedded in its national identity, fostering a powerful and lasting commitment to pacifism. Without that specific trauma, would Japan's post-war path have been the same? Their constitution, which renounces war, was written under American occupation, but it was embraced by a people who had seen the ultimate horror of conflict. A Japan that surrendered after a brutal, drawn-out land invasion might have harbored different feelings, perhaps a deeper-seated resentment or a desire for rearmament, fundamentally changing the political landscape of East Asia. And for the world? The image of the mushroom cloud became a universal symbol of human folly and our capacity for self-destruction. It fueled peace movements, inspired art and literature, and forced humanity to confront its own mortality on a global scale. It's a dark part of our shared heritage, but it's a part that has profoundly shaped our modern consciousness. Without it, our understanding of war, peace, and the responsibility that comes with technology would be fundamentally different. So, what if the bombs were never dropped? It's a path that seems, at first, more humane. But as we've seen, it could have led to a prolonged and even bloodier end to World War II, a divided Japan caught in the crossfire of the Cold War, and a world where the nuclear taboo was never firmly established, leaving humanity perched on an even more precarious precipice. It's a stark reminder that history is a complex chain of cause and effect, where a single decision can ripple outwards, creating a future that is often stranger and more complicated than we could ever imagine. The world we live in was forged in the fire of that decision, for better or for worse. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey through alternate history. It's a fascinating and sobering topic to think about. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more deep dives into the biggest what-ifs in history. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time.